To my lesson on pre-algebra, collecting positive and negative numbers. First of all, I want to take a look at the number line. Looking at 0 here, the numbers to the right are going to be positive. The numbers to the left are going to be negative. I want you to kind of get your bearings there as to how numbers stack up and what numbers are greater than other numbers. In other words, looking at negative 10, even though the absolute value of negative 10, in other words, the number without the sign, 10 seems to be greater than 4, or negative 4. Actually, you can see here on the number line that negative 10 is actually a smaller number than negative 4 because it's farther into the negative zone. I just want students to take a little time getting their bearings on the number line. We can talk about adding and subtracting numbers looking at the number line, counting forward and backward. That's one way to approach it, and if that works, go ahead and go for that. I'm going to take a look at it a little differently, though. I would like you to not think so much about adding and subtracting, but think about collecting. Another thing that I want students to do is to try to get away from looking at the double signage here. What I've written here is negative 3 plus a negative 7. That seems to be contradictory here, and I kind of want to get students away from that and to look at that as actually negative 3 minus 7. Get away from the double signage and look at this sign here being both the value of 7 being negative and also communicating subtraction. Really, it helps students move toward their algebra development if we can just deal with single signage. Okay, so the first couple examples here I want to take a look at adding and subtracting or collecting same sign integers or same sign numbers. In this case we have negative 3 and negative 7. If you think of this as we have 3 negatives and we're collecting it with 7 more negatives, how many negatives do we have? We have a total of 10 negatives, so we're going to write negative 10 there. Here I'm looking at positive 2 plus 4, just our regular addition from elementary school. 2 plus 4 is going to be 6. So you can see that when we have the same signs, we're just going to add and keep the sign. So now I'd like to go ahead and just do a little bit of practice with that. Here I've got some rules or some practice problems. Negative 8 collected with 4 more negatives would be negative 12. 3 plus 11 here is going to give us 14. 8 plus 5 is going to give us 13. This is just a regular addition here. Here we're collecting 6 negatives with 7 more negatives would give us a total of negative 13. Here we are collecting 3 negatives with 9 negatives would be negative 12. And here we're collecting, we're going to have positive 13. What I would like you to do is just practice this rule here. I would like you to go ahead and freeze your screen and go ahead and work on those. Okay, I hope you're back now from having frozen your screen, and now we can go ahead and check your work on that. Again, you can freeze your screen to check your work. Okay, and hopefully we're back, and we're going to go on to another rule. Here we have different signs. It's a little bit a different approach here. We have 3 negatives. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a picture here of 3 negatives, and then we have 7 positives. So I'm going to go ahead and draw 7 positives. I used to teach junior high, and I taught this in the approach of think of dancers. We have 3 negatives at a dance, and we have 7 positives at a dance. How many people are going to get to dance? We can see that these 3 are going to match up with those 3, and we will have leftovers. We're going to have 4 leftovers, and they are positive, that won't be dancing. In this case, we have a case of 2 positives at a dance with 5 negatives. And we can see that we're going to have 2 pairs that are going to pair up, and we're going to have 3 leftovers, and those leftovers are negative. So what I encourage students to do is to think about dancing, pairing things up, looking at our leftovers. And the way we calculate leftovers, we're going to have to find the difference to find out how many leftovers we have, and we do that by subtracting. That kind of helps students to get into that mode of finding the difference between the number of positive and negatives that we have and subtracting. Which leads us to our rule. When you have different signs, you're going to subtract and use the sign of the larger number. In other words, who's not going to get to dance? We're going to have wallflowers. Okay, we've got a couple here that we're going to practice. We've got 12 positives pairing up with 7 negatives. Obviously, there's more positives, so our outcome is going to be positive. There's going to be, and then we can go ahead and carry out our subtraction and find that we have 5 left over that won't be dancing. Okay, here we have 10 negatives pairing up to dance with 3 positives. We obviously have more negatives, so our answer is going to be negative, and then we can go ahead and carry out the subtraction. So really, you just need to focus on your sign, figure out the sign. You do that by identifying what you have more of, and then figure out how many leftovers by subtracting. So here we have 8 minus 4. 8 is larger, so we know our answer is going to be positive. And we carry out the subtraction, we have 4. Here we have equal number of negatives as positives. We're going to have 0 left over because everybody matches up and gets to dance. Okay, here we have 5 negatives with 3 positives. So we have more of the negatives, so we know our answer is going to be negative. And how many more do we have? 5 minus 3 is 2. Okay, here we have equal number of positives as negatives, so again we're going to have 0 left over. Here we have 12 minus 6, regular subtraction. We have more positives, so our answer is going to be positive, and very often we don't even write the positive down. Here we have 11 negatives and 3 positives. Obviously we have more of the negatives, so we're going to write negative here, and then we can carry out the subtraction. So again, figure out what you have more of. That's going to indicate your sign, and then go ahead and carry out your subtraction. I'm going to leave this on here for a couple seconds. Hopefully you can freeze your screen and work on those. Okay, now we can come back to correcting that. You can go ahead and freeze your screen again and check your work on that. Okay, and hopefully you're back. I guess what I want to point out here is there's 2 things to consider. The sign, identify which number is larger and use that sign, and then carry out your calculation. Okay. Okay, last thing that I want to practice or take a look at is when we are subtracting a negative number. This is kind of a weird twist to the rule. You can recognize this very easily. In this case, I have 3 minus a negative 4. You can recognize this very clearly by the fact that you will have 2 negatives separated by a parenthesis. That is a case where you have a double negative and it actually becomes positive. So this becomes an addition statement. We're collecting same signs here. We have a total of 3 plus 4 would give us 7 positives. Okay, in this case we have negative 7 minus negative 5. Again, we have the case of 2 negatives separated by a parenthesis sign. That is a case of subtracting a negative number. We're going to change that to addition. So we're going to say negative 7 plus 5. This is a case where we have different signs. We have more of the negatives, so our answer is going to be negative, and then we can carry out our subtraction. 7 minus 5 is 2. I want to show an application example of where where this comes into play. Let's say we had the temperature yesterday was 20 degrees. By the time we went to bed, or by midnight, it had dropped down to a negative 10. We want to know what was the temperature change there from midday to overnight midnight. So we're looking at the temperature change, and we're going to take 20 minus a negative 10, because generally that's how we find the difference or change in things, is subtracting. That's a case where we have 2 negatives separated by a positive, separated by a parenthesis, so our operation becomes addition here. So we have a 30-degree temperature change. You can see that we had 20-degree drop just to get from 20 to 0, and then another 10 from 0 to negative 10 for a total of 30-degree change in temperature. Okay, I would like us to practice a little bit of that, and that is what I call the double negative. I'm going to go ahead and put this on here. We have negative 5 minus a negative 8. This is a case where we have 2 negatives separated by a parenthesis, so this becomes negative 5 plus 8. We have a rule here. We're different signs. We have more of the positive, so our answer is going to be positive. We can carry out the subtraction. 8 minus 5 is going to be 3. Okay, here we have double negative again. This becomes 8 plus 3. So we have a total of 11 there. So that was the first rule that we practiced today. Here we have two negatives separated again. This becomes 7 plus 2. Go ahead and collect those. We have a total of 9. Here we have a case of double negative. This becomes negative 1 plus 4. But it's a case of different signs. We have more of the positive, so we know our answer is going to be positive. 4 minus 1 is going to be 3. Here we have a case of the double negative again. It becomes positive, or addition, I should say. Negative 11 plus 7, we have more negatives, so our outcome is going to be negative, and then we can carry out the subtraction. 11 minus 7 is 4. Here we have a case of the double negative. 6 plus 6 becomes 12. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and freeze the screen here, or I'm going to ask you to freeze the screen, let you finish those, and then also I've got some mixed practice here where you can practice that. I'll leave that on there for a couple seconds. Hopefully you can freeze your screen. Okay, I'm back. Hopefully you can check your work. You can freeze your screen and check your work on that. Okay, hopefully you've got the practice you need to continue working on adding and subtracting positive and negative numbers. And you can join me next. We'll cover multiplication and division of positive and negative numbers.